I heard the news that my ex-husband, Robert, whom I divorced 10 years ago, has passed away. The one who informed me was Kevin, our son who turned 15 this year and had been living with Robert after our divorce. He boasted about his good condition of health and used to say, "Determination overcomes the illness." It was about 18 months before his passing, he started feeling something was not right. "I feel discomfort in my back," Robert initially told his family. Afterward, his appetite gradually decreased, but he dismissed it as just summer fatigue. Furthermore, he began feeling fatigued and found it difficult to go to work, even after taking sufficient rest. Robert had been refusing even when his newly remarried wife, Catherine, strongly advised him to see a doctor, finally became concerned and decided to go to see his regular physician. Catherine accompanied him for the examination. Upon examining Robert's test results, the doctor recommended that he undergo further diagnostic tests at a comprehensive hospital. At the comprehensive hospital they were referred to, Kevin also accompanied them. After the thorough examination, Catherine and Kevin initially received the results. The results revealed that Robert had pancreatic cancer that had spread to his liver, and surgery was not an option to remove the cancer cells. Both of them hesitated whether they should inform Robert about the diagnosis. At that time, Kevin approached me for advice, but I decided not to intervene because it is not my place to speak up. Robert used to mask his vulnerabilities with an optimistic demeanor. However, deep down, he harbored intense fear. So, if I could say, I wanted to convey, you would want to avoid telling him about the diagnosis so he can have a hope to live. In the end, his wife decided to hide the true diagnosis from him and explained that he had acute pancreatitis. Pancreatic cancer at stage 4 was a severe condition, and chemotherapy was the only available treatment. Dad didn't realize he had cancer because he couldn't undergo chemotherapy. Kevin told me so, but I thought to myself, maybe he pretended not to notice in order to avoid worrying his family. There were moments when it seemed like Robert's condition was improving, possibly due to the effects of treatment. However, the cancer cells were steadily devouring his body. 18 months since the diagnosis of the illness, at the age of 50, Robert has passed away. I was invited to his viewing. It was the first time I met Robert's new remarried wife. "Mom, this is Catherine." Kevin introduced me to her while bringing her over. Although I had heard that she was 15 years younger than my ex-husband, she looked youthful beyond her age. "Thank you for coming today despite your busy schedule. Once things settle down, I would like to talk to you," she quietly said to me. For a brief moment, I noticed a shadow crossing Kevin's face, which made me slightly concerned. A week later, I met Catherine at a cafe near the train station. She must have been busy with various things since her late husband's funeral, and there was likely still a lingering pain from losing her beloved husband. She looked incredibly exhausted. After exchanging greetings, we struggled to find the next words, and an awkward silence filled the air. It was Catherine who broke the silence. "It's about Kevin," she said. I anticipated that it would be about Kevin when Catherine told me that she wants to talk to me. Between my ex-husband and Catherine, they had a first-grade son and a kindergarten daughter. The 3 children had a relationship like real siblings, but the issue was the relationship between Catherine and Kevin. "From now on, what do you think I should do?" Right after his father passed away, Kevin asked me that. Somewhere in his heart, Kevin must have been worried about what would happen to his relationship with his stepmother, Catherine. I thought Catherine also felt anxious about whether she could continue living with Kevin. Even though she didn't express verbally, I felt that Catherine wanted me to take custody of Kevin. But She would not have wanted to do such a thing to Kevin, evicting him from the home he was born and raised in. However, it was clear that raising 3 children on her own would be extremely tough. I painfully felt Catherine's vulnerability about the future. I would take custody of Kevin, but there were circumstances that made it not so easy. I also had remarried 5 years ago. I couldn't be selfish and say to my husband, "I want to have Kevin living with us." But I was relieved that Kevin would rely on me regarding the future, because I had been a terrible mother who abandoned Kevin. When Kevin was 5 years old, I ran away from home. The cause was the harsh treatment I received from my mother-in-law, with whom Robert and I started living immediately after marriage. The reason we ended up living with my mother-in-law was that Robert worried about her living on her own after my father-in-law passed away, and he suggested it. I thought it wouldn't be a problem for her to live on her own since she was still healthy, but I didn't object to living with her. Since I was working, I had expected her to take care of Kevin, who was just 5 years old. However, right after we started living together, my mother-in-law started interfering with my housework. My mom can be a bit fussy, so she might say something, but don't take it too seriously. That's what Robert said when we decided to live with her, but her words and actions were beyond my imagination. She seemed dissatisfied with everything I did, whether it was the seasoning of the food, the way I cleaned, or how I folded the laundry. Of course, I consulted Robert about my MIL's mistreatment, which was just too much. However, he didn't take it seriously and just said, "It'll be fine. You'll eventually get used to it." But it wasn't fine, and that's why I was seeking advice. Gradually, the stress built up, and I became emotionally unstable. Before I knew it, I was bringing up the topic of divorce with Robert. Realizing that I was serious about my decision, Robert tried to reconcile and asked me to give him another chance with my mother-in-law, promising that he would handle her behavior properly. But at that point, I had completely lost any feelings for him. I wanted to take Kevin with me, but my mother-in-law, who was obsessed with having a male heir, adamantly refused. Desperate to escape from my mother-in-law's mistreatment as soon as possible, I left the house alone. The only consolation was that he acknowledges the cause of divorce was that his insufficient support, and he let me keep in contact with Kevin despite his mother's objections. Then a year after I left, I received a message from Kevin informing me of my mother-in-law passed away. Knowing that the abusive treatment from my mother-in-law caused the divorce, it seemed that Kevin had hoped for a remarriage between me and Robert. However, at that time, Robert was dating Catherine. Because of what happened between him and me, Robert was hesitant about whether to marry Catherine or not. After Robert's mother passed away, he chose to marry Catherine and live with her. I have a little brother now. Kevin happily shared the news with me when Catherine and Robert had a baby a year after their marriage. He was also happy when a girl was born 3 years later that. Kevin boasted, "We siblings get along really well." But I believe that relationship only worked because Robert was there. After diagnosis of Robert's illness, Kevin seemed to support Catherine wholeheartedly. Catherine seemed to rely on Kevin. However, after Robert passed away, a subtle tension seemed to arise between the two of them, something we hadn't felt before. It's difficult to find the right words to describe that situation. It's about Kevin. I brought up the topic with my husband during dinner with him on the day I discussed Kevin with Catherine. My husband seemed to anticipate that I was about to bring up the topic of Kevin, especially after Robert passed away. He didn't change his expression. Seemed like he sensed that I'm indecisive about the decision. As long as Kevin is fine, I believe it would be okay for us to live together. What he said was something I had never considered at all. I had told my husband about Robert and Kevin, But other than being informed about his previous marriage, I didn't know much about my husband's past. Everyone has their own history in life. Even though we become family, there are things we may want to say or not say. I didn't push to pry into things or ask uncomfortable questions. However, I did not realize the full significance of my husband's explanation that he had a previous marriage history, not just a history of being divorced. I thought I could never have a family again. But marrying you and becoming a family with you, and perhaps even watch a child grow, there's nothing happier than that, he said. After saying that, my husband began to talk about his own past in a calm. His ex-wife was the same age as him. They had a son who would have been the same age as Kevin if he were alive. On a certain afternoon about 10 years ago, his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number displayed on the screen. "Hello, this is Smith." Immediately after answering the call, he could not believe what he heard. "Your wife and child have been in an accident and were just brought to a hospital. They're currently undergoing emergency surgery." The nurse who made the call apparently provided various explanations afterward, but he couldn't remember what was said. He explained the situation to his company and rushed to the hospital. When he arrived, he was not taken to a hospital room. In a dimly lit room in the basement of the hospital, 2 beds were placed side by side with his wife and daughter sleeping on them. He could not accept the reality of such a sudden incident, and he remained stunned for a while. According to the police officer, while they were crossing the pedestrian crossing, a distracted driver who was using their phone ignored the traffic signal and hit the 2 of them. Afterwards, my husband had a hard time recovering from the sorrow. He found it difficult to concentrate on his work and became fearful of causing trouble for the company. Despite his boss's efforts to persuade him otherwise, he ended up resigning from his position a month after the accident. Several days passed during feeling unable to do anything, but one day, while casually surfing the internet, he came across a victim's self-help group for traffic accidents that regularly held meetings near his house. Although he desperately wanted to change his current situation, he felt uncertain about how to do so. However, recognizing the potential benefit of the support group, he made a decision to participate. At the support group, he engaged in conversations with individuals who had gone through similar painful experiences. Being able to share his worries and sorrows with others provided him with a sense of relief, lighting the burdens he had been carrying alone. And as he continued to participate in meetings several times, he gradually found the courage to accept his past and take steps towards moving forward in life. "And then, I met you." With tears streaming down my face, he gazed at me with gentle eyes and uttered those words. Then I thought, he will fully embrace Kevin. After that, my husband and I had several discussions involving Kevin. And one day during summer vacation, Kevin moved into my house. Since the junior high school Kevin attends is located within a reasonable distance from our home, so he was able to move without transferring to another school. At the dinner table on the first day of the move, Kevin straightened himself and said to us, "I'm looking forward to being a part of this family. One step at a time, let's become a family, right, Kevin?" My husband told gently to Kevin. Upon hearing that, Kevin appeared slightly surprised and then looked down. On the day Kevin moved in, my husband and I invited Catherine and her 2 children to our house. At first, Catherine hesitated to visit my house, but my husband suggested her, since it's a fresh start for each of our families, let's celebrate together, and Catherine accepted that. When Kevin looked down, Catherine's 2 children peered into his face and teasingly said, "Hey, Kevin, are you crying?" "I'm not crying." Kevin tightly hugged his younger brother and sister as he said that. My husband and Catherine both gazed at them with cheerful expressions. Families come in different forms, and for us, this is our family. I feel immensely grateful to my ex-husband bringing us to this point, this new form of family.